Hello and welcome to the Believe Show. I'm thrilled that you're here with us, and today we have as our guest Marcy Porus-Gottlieb. Hi, Marcy.
Hi.
Let me tell people a few things about you. Marcy is an executive coach who helps people, especially with the big things that they're working on. We got introduced through a mutual friend, a coach, which is awesome. And some of the things that Marcy does is she helps clients unlock their truest and their best selves so that they can realize their highest dreams. I'm going to show you her website so that you can see it. That's Marcy's website. And I'm putting this all in context because today we're going to be talking about something that really relates to all of that and highest and deepest truths. So hello, Marcy.
Hello, it's so nice to be with you.
It's great to be with you. Marcy, what is it that you believe that others in your field may not agree with you about?
I know that question. I've listened to enough of your interviews to anticipate that. So thanks for that beautiful question. Yeah, that's a hard one, but I'm gonna give it a stab this way. So I feel like a lot of times clients come to us as coaches and we're all deeply interested in helping people with their problems, with their challenges, right? So people come to us and they say, I want more power in relationships. I have an imposter syndrome I'd like to fix, and usually something that they'd like to fix or change. And so it's all of our nature to say, yes, let's help you. Let's fix that. And what I actually do that's a little different is I try to get people to kind of park that for a little while and actually get into who they are at their sort of most natural state. So I ask the question, which is grammatically really clumsy, but it's a good question. Who can you not be? So who are you in your most natural essence state? And what that allows them to do then is to focus on what they beautifully and naturally and as a gift bring to the table. And if they can unlock that, which is not always an easy process, but really understanding what they bring on a positive side, and on the way that's truly them, then we can actually landing in that and planting in that, we can actually get to some of the things that might be standing in the way of them actually realizing that and being able to live in activation of that every day. So while many of us coaches rush in to sort of solve the problem, I feel like I try to go upstream a little bit and understand sort of what's deeply in there that's natural that allows them to kind of understand that and then move forward.
I thought this was fascinating when you and I talked about it a little bit before, because basically what you're saying is you're coming to me with, let's say I want to be a more strategic leader, or I have an imposter syndrome. So things that a lot of us coaches have seen, and you say, hey, hold on, we're going to park that. I realize this is a big issue for you. This is what our coaching engagement is about, but we're just going to park it. And let's figure out things like, who can you not be? What kind of reactions do you have when you say to people, senior leaders, this kind of thing?
Well, it is funny. At times I feel like, and I hope it doesn't ever feel this way to my client, but a little bit of bait and switch. Like, you think you're coming to get this help, but you're actually really doing this. They're actually a whole range of emotions or reactions, like, really? Are we really going to do that? All the way from, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. Maybe that is the best place to start because that's who I am. So, all of us, I think in the world, we're trying to show up as what we think others might want us to be, what our work cultures demand of us, sort of the superstar performer. And I think that we're all much better off if we can really just start with who we are uniquely, find out what our gifts are, what our beautiful brand, and all that. You've had Susan Critton on talking about beautiful, personal brand, professional brand. Who is that person? And then they can expand. And so it doesn't take very long for them to kind of say, okay, well, let's give that a shot and let's plant me, and then understand how I can sometimes even use that actually unique, innate gift to help them with the thing they show up with, like imposter syndrome. But I always hope it's not the feeling of bait and switch.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that analogy. So if I'm your client and I start working with you, how long is it, just even in time, before we get to, let's say my issue is I want to be more strategic and less tactical?
Surprisingly sooner than you might think. So this isn't like a months-long drawn-out process of figuring out who you are and then like sort of step one, step two. Actually, what we do is I try to just get them thinking about that notion of essence of who you truly are, who you can't not be. And then I introduce the notion like, if you can land on that, then what you want to think about is all all of the forms in your life, whether it's form as a volunteer, as a worker, as a mother, as a friend, as whomever, daughter, then you want to make sure that that essence kind of flows through all those different forms. So that's a whole longer conversation, which I'm happy to come back and talk about. But the answer to the question is, what often happens is we'll land on some truths that getting to bone truths, we'll land on some of their truths and sort of who they are. And then at the same time, then we can reflect and say, okay, if this is the case, then how does this person want to relate to this issue? How can this person understand their imposter syndrome differently and actually get to where they're trying to get to, which is releasing that from their day to day.
So it's actually pretty soon in the process. The first question is about your core, and then pretty soon after it, how can you use that?
Yeah, I would just add that, like, oftentimes we're working in parallel. I think about kids in parallel play. Like, we're working in parallel. We're all understanding essence isn't oftentimes a very quick process. So we're sort of bubbling on that while at the same time we're looking at what's happening in their lives right now in their working world. Because I work with people who need to activate and really solve their problems in a fairly quick, expeditious manner. But just getting that seed planted is helpful for most.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think you're right. That's typically, so in the coaching profession or in the consulting profession, when someone comes to you, you want to help them solve their problem, but you're saying, hey, hold on, we will get there. Kind of, let's have trust around this.
1 minute, just take a breath. I say, take a breath. And usually, and when they realize that that's what we're doing, and when they realize that that's a really kind of beautiful, holistic way to do it, they're pretty much on board. I mean, they're like, yeah, I get that. I think that's a smart strategy. Yeah.
How did you come to this belief?
Well, I would say really transparently, I think I did it the other way for quite a while in my coaching. So again, it comes from this eagerness that all of us coaches and consultants and people in the world have to really help and solve. And so I sort of had this hat on, like, yeah, I can, I'm smart. I've done this enough. I can figure out and help you solve your problem. And that works for a while, but there's a couple things that doesn't serve. It doesn't serve the person who wants to solve the problem on their own. So in some way, when we step in to help solve, or I have the answer, in a way, and this took me a while to understand too, in a way, we're kind of, disempowering people, or even sometimes infantilizing them, like, you're not capable of solving this problem. You need me to come in and help you. So it took me a while to kind of quiet down and understand that, and not rush into this natural proclivity and desire to want to help. So laying back a little bit, taking a breath, and then really kind of understanding and seeing the data, the results, the proof that when I started people with really understanding who they were deeply, and this essence, like, really, who can they not be? I saw results in the more tactical challenges that they were facing. Mm-hmm. So it just little by little became sort of part of my approach, and now it's my whole approach.
Does any particular story come to mind, in an anonymized way, of course, but of somebody who has come to you with something, with an issue, a challenge, which is how people come to coaching, which is a super appropriate, but where this checking out your core self really helped in the problem?
Well, it's maybe an archetype I can share that, like, oftentimes we're coaching, sometimes male, sometimes female, busy and big people who have really, their identity has been built and is deeply now rooted in their ability to quickly move and make change at the highest level, make impact. And that is what defines, and often in our work cultures, that's what defines a really successful person, and a successful, leader. And so one man came to me with this sort of, I'm not doing that which I need to do to get those things. And he wanted to really talk about, in the coaching world, we often talk about technical and adaptive challenges. So he wanted to land a lot on the technical, which is really us, sort of talking about technical things, like, with 5 steps, you can solve this problem. And so what we did is I knew he was deeply embedded in that approach. And so we started with that. And what he came to realize was that the 5-step approach, this technical approach, really wasn't working for him. It wasn't solving the issues that he really needed to solve to make the impact he was desiring. And so I started some of the things we've been talking about a little bit today, and he came to it sort of unwillingly. People are deeply rooted that this is the way I'm going to make impact. And so it took a while, and it often sometimes does, a number of sessions and a bit of time to reflect. And in that time, I'm kind of giving him things to read and think about, and I'm gently trying to move him to a different identity with a lot of, showing the light, shining the light and being the mirror for some of the way he makes meaning. I hear you saying this word. I'm not sure. What do you mean by that? And so this is hard work. And so over time, I think he really came again to realize that the technical solutions he was trying to apply to adaptive challenges, which are more behavioral and about how we believe and assume things about the world, that those weren't really going to hit it. And by the way, I'll just put in a plug for, I think a lot of problems in the world we're trying to solve, right, with technical solutions, but the challenges have to do with what we call the containers, ourselves, and the ability for us to be able to see things with different lenses. So that went way beyond the scope of the question. But I think that the archetype is really the person who comes wanting to get this sort of technical solutions, answers that we as coaches supposedly have, right? And what I'm really trying to do, and I did in this case, was trying to turn him a little bit to understand his identity differently and to understand how to kind of solve the problems and make the impact he wants, but in a slightly less traditional sort of way.
So instead of going through a multi-step approach, it sounds like you're working with a number of your clients in terms of changing the lens or the framework.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, so the word I often use is upstream. We're going upstream of the technical problem. I think what I imagine when I think of upstream, I think of like salmon swimming upstream, which is deeply Pacific Northwest related. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times we have to stop and take a breath and stop the step-by-step, like, let's just move through this with a technical solution. And we have to go upstream and sort of understand how we're making meaning of things. And if we can do that, then it shifts that lens and we can see even the things that we might have perceived actually as problems. They may not actually be problems. They may be something entirely differently. They may be points to leverage or opportunities that because we were looking at with a certain lens, we didn't see it that way.
So Marcy, what is an example of a type of question that I might ask if I'm not in the tactical, but I'm more in the holistic or more person-centered approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to turn it a little bit. It's not so much in the question you ask at first, it's more about in how you listen. So I think one of the things that really great coaches do is they just listen really hard. So when I do my consults, I offer really long consults for people who are interested in working with me. And I tell them, look, I'm going to tell you about my business and about my coaching approach. But the first thing I want to do is really understand you. So I'm just going to have you tell me your story. And so I'm listening, and actually sometimes I'm writing down like words they use or things that might indicate a set of values or a way they see the world, an assumption or belief they have. And then comes your beautiful question, which is the question. I heard you say XYZ about the way you understand your performance. Tell me more about that. Or what's the hardest thing about that? Or what's the best thing about that? To get them to kind of get to their growth, we call it growth edge, to understand really deeply how they make the meaning, and then to be able to kind of, to get an opening, an avenue to kind of move down so that I can, understand better where they're coming from and how better I can help them.
And then let's say a client has stopped their engagement with you, has completed coaching with you. What sorts of questions do you find that they're asking themselves afterwards? I guess in my head, I'm trying to see what's the difference between the tactical approach and a different kind of approach. So I love your answer. Hey, listen first. That client will need to listen first. But then as they're going through their day and their priorities and what they're in charge of, what do they tend to start asking themselves after coaching?
That is a great question. You're a very good interviewer. If no one's
You're very fun to talk with.
Well, that's a great question. And it's a great question because now I have to think a little bit. But I think I would say that what I want them to leave me with is greater emotional intelligence, which really has to do with stopping. So that self-awareness, the first two pillars, of course, of Goleman's work, Daniel Goleman's work, is like self-awareness and awareness of self and self-regulation. So I want them to, if I want them to take anything, I want them to be aware of how they're coming across. I want them to be aware of how the difference between compulsively reacting and stopping and pausing and breathing and choosing a reaction, right? We know about that. So I want them to have begun or gotten pretty skilled at a practice where they're able to do that. Because I believe that if you can do that, right, you can pretty much solve a lot of problems. So being aware, how am I coming across? And in a moment that can be a crazy or a difficult moment, stopping and react, and not, instead of reacting, which can cause all the problems, as we all know, choosing a reaction that's really grounded in essence, in what they believe to be true, their values, and really about something they can be proud of an hour later, as opposed to like, oh, I have to go apologize for that. I mean, I'd say another thing that I want them to walk away with is just a better sense of self, like that they can solve the problems that come to them if they really understand their essence and who they can't not be, and land in that in times of great trouble and times of great delight, that it works in both. And I always say the coaching really, like, if I do my job right, they're not just getting ease now. They're not just getting tools and tricks for now and ease for now and solutions for now. They're getting them forever. So I'm really hoping that my coaching sticks, and it's an investment that people can amortize over time and really, have it help them for a long time in their work and in their life, honestly.
So it's so clear what you're saying. So whereas they might have had a 5-step process at the beginning, at the end, they're more reflective. They're more observant of even their own reactions. So it's almost like if they were asking themselves a real physical question, it might be, what am I observing? How does it sit with me? What's the right thing to do? It just seems like more introspective questions, as opposed to, here's the checklist that I'm going through.
And let me add, I have nothing against a good checklist. I love checklists. Like, I believe deeply that just before our conversation, I had a meeting with a client, and we were talking about when to listen to the heart and when to the head. And oftentimes we listen to the head a lot more than the heart, which I wish were the other way around. But the head and checklist has so much value. And so I think if it's a step process, right, that I want the questions and the consciousness and the essence and all that stuff to be kind of root. That's the beginning, that's the foundation. And then absolutely, there are often techniques I'm sharing about, if I'm talking to leaders about how to really show up better. There's all that Susan Critton stuff, the personal brand, is amazing. And that's quite tactical and quite technical when it comes to how to put that on LinkedIn and how to really share that in an interview and all those things. So let me pay big homage to technical solutions and techniques when they're called upon to help.
So sort of checklist.
Both and. That's my favorite new phrase. As we have this divided country and all this polarity and all this paradox, can we get away from but and get it into more of both and.
At this point, I'm going to ask the people who are with us today, what is a takeaway that you have so far from listening to Marcy? Please let us know in the comments. If you like, you can ask a question, but please let us know, what are you taking away? Whether it's about coaching a client, whether it's about how leaders can be, whether it's about questions. So any of that, let us know what you are taking away. Marcy, I have to ask you about bone truths, because that's you told me when we were speaking, and I just thought, what a cool term. Can you speak a little bit about it?
Yes, I'd love to. So when I think of bone truths, it makes me think of an X-ray, the old, or an MRI, or whatever the new diagnosing vehicle you use now. So like, what I love about this notion of bone truths is it's really speaking about what I believe in my bones, And when we talk about getting a feeling for who you are and your values and your essence, a lot of that has to do with what you believe. And this is, Senya, this is your work, what I believe, right? This is the common question that you're asking in interviews. And so when I think about bone truths, I'm really asking folks clients and friends and whomever, to really think about, what is it that I believe to be true about myself, the world. And I was walking my dog this morning, I was thinking about what an excruciatingly good question is to ask on December 15th, 2020, as we come out of this crazy year that we've had. And I bet you that, I don't know if we'd asked ourselves to write down our bone truths at the beginning of the year and now at the end of the year, whether they might be actually, even though they're in our bones, they might have shifted a little bit, because it's been such an extraordinarily remarkable year in so many ways. And so the bone truth thing is real, and it's actually something I'd like to leave with the listeners, is this idea of, if you took 10 minutes, you set a clock and you took a big white piece of paper and you wrote down all of the things you believe to be true about the world, yourself, and see what comes up. Like, don't overthink it, just see what flows on the page. And I would actually write it by hand as opposed to typing it, just because that feels more you, more us, and see what comes out. And I think that the value of this exercise, I can think of a few takeaway values for it. One would be, if you're landing in your truths, in your bone truths, what you really believe to be true, it's very grounding in a time that can be very uncertain and very fast moving and complex. So whether we're talking about COVID or we're just talking about the normal busy world, like, what can I really center on for myself? That's one takeaway. And then I was thinking this morning walking that, like, it might be cool as we gather for our holidays, whether it's Zoom and sadly not so much in person, but even over Zoom, it might be kind of a fun exercise to have everyone write down their bone truths and then share them and see if people can either agree or disagree or have some rousing conversation about what is number one for you and why do you feel that way. It could be a really fun, interesting way to connect. And also, as we're all still talking about how can we connect with the other side, the other perspective, as we live in this divided nation, can we actually find some bone truths that we have in common that we can actually hold our hands over and actually feel less divided because of. So that's a little bit about bone truths. I just think it's a fabulous vehicle for people to both get grounded in what they believe, and actually that can help with brand, and it can help with work, and it can help with, how I want to choose my activities, my volunteer work, all the things I want to do in my life. And am I resonating, are my bone truths resonating with what I'm doing right now, how I'm spending my time, whether it be in work or at rest or at play? So that's one value. And I think maybe this connection with others through the bone truth exercise could be pretty cool.
I think that's an awesome party game. I think that's really fun. I just love asking questions anyway, but I think that's really fun if you get a group of people that are open to it. Hey, we're doing this right now. This is our thing.
What's true for you? What do you believe? And you'd be surprised at how if you don't think too deeply, it just comes off. It just comes out of you. It just flows out. And it can be about anything. I believe that people are good. I believe that people are bad. I believe that my dog is my best friend in COVID. I believe that, there's lots of things that you can come up with, and don't overthink it. Just let it flow.
That's awesome. Our last two questions. As people step away from being with us today, what is a thought or an idea you'd like to leave everyone with?
Yeah, so many. There are so many thoughts and ideas. Let me see if I can think of one. I would say this, it just popped into my head. I think that we haven't talked about this explicitly, but I think right now in our world at this time, a very big dose of self-compassion would be amazing right about now. So whether that's I'm just tired and I don't know why, and I can't seem to activate to my to-do list, or whether it's like I haven't gotten as much. I should have learned how to speak Swahili in this moment of being, completely sequestered in my house. Let's just give ourselves a big old dose of self-compassion right now. I'm a big fan of Kristen Neff's work, and I regularly bring it to my clients, and even my big and busy male CEOs like it eventually. We just have to speak to ourselves in a way that we would speak to our beloved baby or our dog or our best friend. We have to start speaking to ourselves that way. So I would leave everybody with that, really thinking deeply about how we can be nice to ourselves and really compassionate in these moments.
That fits so much with the timing that it's the end of this weird year. But it also fits with core beliefs and just how do we want to keep treating ourselves.
Yeah. Self-compassion is it. I mean, I think that if we can turn that on, a lot of our suffering can really dissolve. We have to just be nice to ourselves and realize, and first realize that this is another thing I do with clients. Is do you realize that that's how you're thinking about yourself? And so can you hear the words? Would you ever talk to your most cherished friend like that? No, you wouldn't. So anyway, that's more awareness.
And then the last question, if you could snap your fingers, I'll make a bigger snap. If you could snap your fingers and almost everyone in the world were to take one action, what would you want that to be?
Well, that one's easy. I just think kindness. Like, we can so afford to just be more kind to each other. Like, I mean, I did a talk recently, and we were talking about the power of our talk, and how you can turn someone's day with a kind word, and you can also turn someone's day with a less kind word or a harsher word. And I just think we just have to stay on the kindness right now for all the time, but particularly now for ourselves, for everyone else. Like, I make it a business every day to, like, in any interaction, the few that I get to have, even somebody passing on the street, I like your mask, or, that's a beautiful dog, or whatever it might be, somebody at the grocery store. It's or on a Zoom call. It's just so important. I think that's what I'd like to share.
Kindness. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have been here today with Marcy Porus-Gottlieb, and I'm thrilled you've been joining us here. Marcy, thank you. I loved everything we went through. So from the beginning to the bone truth to the questions, and then ending with kindness, I think is super fitting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love being with you. You're amazing.
Same. I feel exactly the same. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and see you again soon. Thank you, Marcy.
Bye-bye. Take care.